Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, I am presenting a broad overview of League of Dungeoneers. I realize that after all of my coverage that I've done, I haven't actually really talked about the nuts and bolts, the kind of broad overview of how you actually play the game. Now, this is not a teaching video. I don't do those. I'm not good at them. They're not my forte. They're not in my wheelhouse. This is just kind of a broad overview of what you can expect when you sit down to play League of Dungeoneers, starting with the first session and then repeating from one session to the next. So the first thing you're going to do is you want to create your characters, and you want to create a party of 4 characters. And those can be full-fledged characters that have all of their stats on a character sheet. Or you could mix and match, have a couple full-fledged characters that you roll up, and then maybe add in a couple of the NPC mercenaries to hire in order to flesh out your party. But you really do want a full party of 4 characters, and for some reason I only have 3 here, so do as I say, not what I show. But you really want to have a full party of 4 characters to take advantage of the different professions and their strengths, and using those strengths to offset the weaknesses of the other characters in your party. So once you have all of your characters in your party finalized, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to roll up a random settlement. So there are a number of different settlements on the map. Up here we have Freyfell or Irondale or Windfair or Rochdale. All of those different settlements can be a starting settlement. The only settlement that isn't a starting settlement is the main settlement of Silver City. And you will be working your way towards Silver City at some point because Silver City has the most quests associated with it. Once you figure out which city you're going to start in, you will probably want to play the first, when you create a new party, you will probably want to play the first scenario, the first mission, and that's called First Blood. And that is a skirmish mission, and the skirmish missions you will play on these outdoor boards here. And this is a graveyard board, so this probably isn't the best example, but this is the one I chose because I think it looks cool. And the back of this one has kind of a city street. You could be ambushed in the city street. That might be kind of cool. But on this first mission, you will set up your heroes in the middle of this skirmish map, and then some bandits will try to ambush you. And you want to fight the bandits, and it can be pretty difficult. That bandit leader is a really hard hitter. And so it won't be uncommon for you to maybe have a couple heroes knocked out after this first fight. But after you dispatch of the bandits, hopefully you've gotten some good loot and some stuff you can sell, because what you want to do is you will then be in your starting settlement. And at that point, you're going to want to buy some supplies. Hopefully you can buy maybe a couple pieces of armor or some potions or some beef jerky, some bandages and that kind of stuff. Just help get your party outfitted a little more. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start questing. So when you start questing, you'll probably want to stick with the base book quests, and you can either choose the initial campaign, which you're probably you should do the initial campaign at some point, because it kind of eases you into the world and kind of the ongoing story in the background of this world. And at the end of this campaign, you do get permission to explore other areas. You don't have to follow that. You could just have the complete world wide open from the beginning. But I would recommend starting with the Dead Rising campaign, working through those 6 scenarios, and then you can start your random questing all around the map. But that first little campaign will take you to a couple of key locations. So let's say we started in Irondale and we were going on some random quests. And so what you would do is you would roll up a random quest, and then Irondale is this teal color here. Then you would roll a d6, and each of the small settlements has 6 quest sites associated with that settlement. And so if you rolled and you rolled a 1, then your next quest would take place at this little crypt here. And then you would consult the quest book to see how to set up your dungeon. But before you do that, you would have to travel to that settlement. And you can travel a certain number of hexes per day. At the beginning of each day, you will roll a d12. And I think it's on a 12, you have a random travel event. And depending on what kind of terrain you are on, you will either have a road event, a wilderness event, or a desert event. And each one of these is a little random event that you will have to overcome. They're, from what I have seen, they're not quite as deadly as those in Warhammer Quest. So I don't think you'll have a bunch of, total party wipeouts just on your way to the dungeon or on your way to the settlement. But these add a lot of little flavor and little interesting things. Sometimes these can snowball into little side quests. Sometimes these might be skirmish combat encounters, but yeah, these are always fun to encounter. So once you get to your quest location, that's when you'll take your exploration deck. And the exploration deck will be constructed based on the quest instructions in the quest book. And each quest will have a certain number of corridors. Each corridor is a C and a number, and each room is R and a number. And sometimes the different quests and setup instructions might say, construct your deck with 4 corridors and 4 rooms, but don't use these rooms. Don't use these corridors. Sometimes they might tell you to specifically use this corridor or specifically use this room. Most of the quests will have an objective room, and that will be, you'll have an objective room card here, and you will set that up when you reach the objective room. You'll take all of your corridors and all of your rooms and you'll shuffle them together. And in the bottom 4, you will put your objective room and then you will shuffle that. And if you have a side quest, maybe 1 side quest or 2 side quests, you can also shuffle that in the other cards. And then once those 2 groups are shuffled, you will stack those together in an exploration deck. I have this stacked up in a certain way just to kind of show certain things. So I'm not going to show the shuffling of that, but it's very, very easy to set up your exploration deck. So we have our exploration deck, and then you will take your starting tile. There are 2 starting tiles, or there's actually 1 starting tile, and it's double-sided. So you have a desert on one side, and you have wilderness on the other. So you will place that on the table, and then you will take a door. All dungeons have a non-locked, non-trapped door that represents their entrance. So you will put that there. And then you will take your exploration deck. And that is the details of the dungeon. And then you will set up your heroes. And for this example, we'll just have 1 hero on the board there, this elf ranger. So then you start exploring the dungeon. And you do that by opening up the door. And then you will put down the next tile. So here we have a corridor. So we'll take our corridor tile and we will place that there. So this door is now open. So now we can replace that with an open door to show that it's open. And then this corridor actually has 4 doors. So you have the original door and then the 3 other doors. So this is pretty cool because this is where the dungeon starts to split and exploration starts to get a little more meaningful. So then what you want to do is you want to divide these cards starting from the bottom to keep the exploration order intact to each of the exits available. So we'll divide these like that. Okay, so now we have our different routes that we can take. And then each one of those will get a closed door as well. This is considered a corridor. So corridors have a 30% chance of having a random encounter, an enemy encounter in them. So then you would roll your D100, and if it was a 30%, 30 or less, then you would have a random encounter. And then you would roll up on the monster chart. So each quest has its own monster table that you will be rolling up. For this example here, I'm going to be fighting against the Dark Elves. So we'll keep those there. So then it would be the hero's turn. And on a hero's turn, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You have 2 different actions, and a lot of actions only cost 1 point. Some actions cost 2 points. So you can move, you can open or close a door or a chest, but you have to roll to see if they are locked or trapped. You can take a standard attack. You can take a parry stance. You can change your gear that's in one of your quick slot items. You can shove an enemy. You can aim a ranged weapon. You can load or reload your ranged weapons. You can stand up if you're knocked down. You can pick up a dropped weapon. You can exchange gear between heroes. You can cast a quick spell. You can apply bandages, search furniture or a corpse. You can focus a spell that gives you a better chance of casting that spell. And you can also break down a door. For 2 action points, you can pick a lock. You can do a power attack. You can do a charge attack. Cast a standard spell, search a room or a corridor, change gear in your backpack, or apply bandage to yourself. So now it's kind of our first official turn. The first thing that we would do is we would roll to see if we have a certain threat event. And you roll a scenario die. If it's a 9 or a 10, then you have to roll the threat die. And if the threat die rolls less than the threat level of the dungeon, then you have to roll up one of these threat charts, depending on if you are in combat, or not in combat, or in combat. And those are bad things that happen while you are in the dungeon. Then you can take your movement turns. Then you can take your various actions. So we could move into this room. I'm kind of truncating the nitty gritty of counting spaces and all of that. But then we would get to our first kind of official locked or unlocked door. So this door here, you would roll a D10 and a D6 to see if the door is locked or if it's trapped. If it's trapped, then you would draw a trap card. And in this case, we have a trap door here. So a trap door, we might fall into a pit. This is going to modify our perception, our chance of noticing the trap before it is sprung. And then this will modify our chance of disarming that trap. Once we have opened up the door, either by locking, or if it's locked, we have to pick the lock. We have to disarm the trap. Or if we can't pick the lock, we have to bash it down. Once we open up the door, we can replace that with an open door, and then we can continue exploring. So here we have found the library. So we would set up the library. This game is very liberal with the rules for door placement. You can place the doors basically anywhere you want. So we could have this tile come over here, and there's the door here. They don't have to be centered or anything. As long as furniture isn't blocking, you're good. So then we could set up the door here, and now rooms have a 50% chance of having a combat encounter. Let's say we roll the 42, we would have a combat encounter, and then you would roll up your enemies on your enemy chart, and then you would roll up random placement for your enemies there. And then we would come into the room, we would again roll our threat, and then we would have our combat. Once the combat would be done, then we could search the corpses. This room also has tables, so the room will say, there are 3 bookshelves and a table in this room. They can be searched. So at that point, you could take your searching chart here, and you could roll up on your table or roll up on your shelves. And this has a whole chart of different types of things that you can search and what you might find when you search. This particular room also has 2 doors. So we have the door that we came in, and we have another door. And because it's so liberal, let's say you have a small place or a small table, and you don't want your dungeon to run off too far in one direction or the next, you could put your door anywhere in order to keep the dungeon contained. And then we could, again, move up to this door. We would roll our threat, of course, see if anything bad happens after we've done searching. And then you could see if this door is locked or trapped. If it's not, you could open that up. And then here we had found our objective room. So at that point, you would take your objective room and you would set that up. Then you would consult your quest guide to see what kind of monsters. Maybe this Drider here is the boss monster of this dungeon. So maybe they're in there, and they're flanked by a couple of their little dark elf minions there. And then we would have to move in. Of course, we couldn't set it up like this because then we would have to be going through lava, and lava is instant death. So we would probably want to set that up something like this or like that. But you get the idea there. And then once you have found your objective room, once you have done the quest, satisfied the objective of the quest, then you can travel back to your settlement. Now we have some of these other cards here too. So let's say we didn't find this objective room, and let's say we went down this passageway here. we would have found our side quest. So at this point, the next room would be where our side quest takes place, or the next card. So in the corridor, maybe we have found the person we are looking for or the thing we are looking for to satisfy our side quest. And in this passage here, it would just be 2 corridors and then a dead end because there are no other cards in this section. And then maybe we needed to explore south here, where we would find the guard's chamber and a small study. Throughout the dungeon, you also want to take special care to not bash down doors as long as you don't need to, because you do want to think about closing doors as you are moving through the dungeon, because one of the major threats that comes when you fail that threat roll are wandering monsters. And wandering monsters start at the beginning of the dungeon, and they will work their way through the dungeon, slowly moving towards the heroes. And so it kind of adds this time pressure to the exploration and to going through the dungeon. Once you have satisfied your objective, you can clean everything up, and then you need to travel back to the settlement where you took your quest. So if we were here, we would have to travel back, and then we could complete our quest. And then you just kind of rinse and repeat for as long as you can keep your characters alive. That is the kind of a basic, broad kind of overview of League of Dungeoneers. I just wanted to make sure I had a video just kind of giving you the quick and dirty lowdown of what you can actually expect when you play League of Dungeoneers. So, all right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this little video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.